Ukrainian Special Operation Forces, alongside other elements of the armed forces of Ukraine, launched a precise drone strike on the Russian military airfield in Saratov region on Thursday morning, stated the General Staff. Russian state media reported a drone attack on the town of Engels in the early hours of March 20 that left a strategic airfield on fire, with onlookers publishing the erupting explosions in the area. The Engels air base, located 700 kilometers from the front lines of Ukraine, hosts Russian strategic aviation capable of carrying nuclear payloads and, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, was stockpiling a number of Kh-101 missiles used for terror strikes on Ukrainian soil. The Ukrainian High Command noted that they have a detailed plan of Russian military sites that are being targeted in these strikes, preventing unnecessary damage to civilian infrastructure. Russian troops continue their attacks on Ukrainian cities. 2 men were injured in Sloviansk in the Donetsk region as the settlement was hit by 6 Russian UAVs. Both civilians aged 28 and 30 were hospitalized with mine blast trauma and shrapnel wounds to the head, arms and legs.
There were 3 explosions. They were so strong that I didn't understand what to do.
Weren't you injured?
No, I'm fine. Thankfully, I was in the hallway. Those people who were in their living room were injured.
The attack damaged 2 apartment buildings, an enterprise, an office building, an educational institution, and vehicles.
I was lying on the couch. There was an explosion, the first, the second, the third. Doors were blown out.
In a single day, March 19, Russian troops targeted 6 different settlements of the Donetsk region, killing 1 and injuring 5. Almost 30 civilian objects were damaged, among them 16 residential buildings. Ukraine supports ending strikes on energy and civilian infrastructure, stated President Zelensky. During a press conference in Helsinki on Wednesday evening, he commented on his talks with President Trump, underlining it was a frank, positive and substantive conversation.
We received signals from the American side that most likely it involves energy silence, meaning no strikes on the energy infrastructure of either country, as well as civilian infrastructure. Here I told President Trump that civil infrastructure is a very comprehensive concept. We agreed that we will do everything from our side to prepare a list of objects that we will consider priorities and what we consider civilian infrastructure. This can include different types of infrastructure, such as railways. We will talk about port infrastructure. I don't know what our partners will confirm, but we will prepare for this meeting in Saudi Arabia.
During the 1-hour phone call, the 2 leaders also discussed the possibility of U.S. assistance in restoring the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest NPP in Europe. Since March 2022, the facility has been under Russian military occupation.
The question was whether we are capable of restoring this plant. We discussed this. In my opinion, I said that just the plant itself is not enough. There must be appropriate infrastructure, water supply, and also technical personnel. There are many steps to take for the plant to start generating money and, above all, electricity for the people in 1.5 to 2.5 years. This is my vision. Then President asked if there was an understanding that America could restore it. I told him this: if it's possible to modernize, invest money, etc., we are ready to discuss it with you.
According to the Ukrainian president, he gave Trump an update on the battlefield situation and the consequences of Russian strikes targeting civilian infrastructure. They both discussed the situation in the Kursk region, touched on the topic of the prisoners of war swaps and the return of Ukrainian children who were taken by Russian forces. The US and Ukrainian presidents agreed both countries will work together to bring a real end to the war, reported White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt. During a daily briefing, she shared some details of their conversation. In particular, she noted that the United States has moved beyond the previously negotiated mineral deal with Ukraine, aiming to secure a lasting peace.
So we've moved beyond just the economic minerals deal framework, and we're looking at a lasting ceasefire. Right now we're at a partial ceasefire, but again, the president is sending his highly skilled, intelligent, and experienced team to Saudi Arabia later this week to continue fighting for peace in this conflict.
According to Leavitt, Trump and Zelensky agreed on a partial ceasefire on energy infrastructure. Also, she stressed that the Ukrainian president raised the issue of additional air defense for the country.
President Zelensky asked for additional air defense systems to protect his civilians, particularly Patriot missile systems, and President Trump agreed to work with him to find what was available, particularly in Europe. President Trump also asked President Zelensky about the children who had gone missing from Ukraine during the war, including the ones that had been abducted. And President Trump promised to work closely with both parties to help make sure those children were returned home.
The Ukrainian Air Force received a new batch of F-16 fighter jets, announced President Zelensky during an online press briefing on Wednesday evening. While the exact number of jets delivered as well as their country of origin remains undisclosed, Zelensky emphasized that Air Force reinforcement was a positive development among the escalating Russian air raids across the country. European leaders are meeting in Brussels for a two-day summit which started on Thursday. Among the main topics are the strengthening of the EU defense and support for Ukraine. In an official statement ahead of the meeting, it said that Ukraine must be in the strongest possible position before, during and after negotiations to end the war. Additionally, it's noted that the EU is ready to play its full part in supporting the upcoming steps. Talking to journalists before the summit, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed, "These are decisive days for Europe."
We have a packed agenda for the European Council. Of course, we will discuss Ukraine, how to get to a just and lasting peace. But we are challenged in our competitiveness and we are challenged in our security agenda. So therefore, the competitiveness topic will be an important one for this European Council. And then Readiness 2030, the white paper, the new plan for security will also be in the center of discussion that we're going to have today.
For us, it is crucial that Ukraine remains an independent, sovereign, and democratic nation, that it can continue on its path towards the European Union, and that it has a strong army of its own, even after a peace agreement. These are things that we must ensure. And of course, this now also includes the possibility of a ceasefire on the basis of President Zelensky's proposals. There is now a first step that seems possible in view of the results of the talks between the Russian president and the American president.
Sanctions against Russia must remain in place until it starts withdrawing from Ukraine's land and fully compensates for the damage caused by its aggression. This was stressed by President Zelensky in his speech at the meeting of the European Council. He stated that ongoing diplomatic efforts do not mean Russia should face less pressure. Zelensky also said it is crucial that EU support for Ukraine does not dwindle, but instead continues and grows.
We need funds for artillery shells and would really appreciate Europe's support with at least 5 billion euros as soon as possible. Investments in weapons production are needed both in Ukraine and in your countries. Europe needs technological independence, including in weapons manufacturing. Everything necessary to defend the continent should be produced here in Europe. We must work toward this together. And I appreciate those who are already taking concrete steps in this direction.
Zelensky also mentioned that Europe needs to make decisions quickly and create the mechanisms to protect itself from unnecessary blocking. In particular, he stated that despite Ukraine fulfilling the requirements, there are difficulties in opening the initial and subsequent negotiation clusters for EU accession.
European efforts that should be bringing more security and peace are also constantly being obstructed, and I believe this is wrong. Europe must have a way to prevent individual actors from blocking what's necessary for all. If we say Europe should be stronger in global competition, we must also talk about making European decision-making faster, more flexible, more effective, whether in politics, defense, economics, industry, or any other area.
Ukraine has received 1 billion euros from the European Union under the Economic Recovery and Assistance Initiative. This was announced by Ukraine's Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. He stated that this is the second tranche provided by the EU, funded through revenues generated from frozen Russian assets. The money will go toward priority state budget expenditures. Under the G7-backed initiative, European partners have already provided Ukraine with a total of 4 billion euros.